Hello, welcome to Ray-ality TV. I'm Raymond Bakari. Today I am joined by one of the three Providence Ward 3 City Council candidates, Bradly VanDerStad. The incumbent in the ward, City Councilwoman Irva LaFortune, is running for mayor, thus opening up the seat for 2022. The ward contains the neighborhoods of Mount Hope, Hope Village Summit, Collier Park, and Blackstone. Bradly, how are you today?
I'm doing good, Ray. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate you.
It's good to have you on. My first question here, you're one of the three candidates running to represent Ward 3 in 2022. Can you tell those watching a little bit about yourself and why you're best to represent the ward?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll start by saying it was not my intention to be a city council person. I have not. I didn't study this. I didn't major in this. I originally came to Providence to be a cruise ship director. I was going to sail around in the ocean. I was just going to help people on their vacations. But after I showed up, I just got so engaged. It's so easy to fall into. You just kind of fall into being connected to this community. Over the 10 years that I've been here, I've gotten involved with the Summit Neighborhood Association. I've worked with Habitat for Humanity. I've joined the Rhode Island National Guard. I've been all over the place in my service journey, and I've learned a lot about leadership. I've learned a lot about authentic leadership, what it means to be a true representative of one's community, and I feel that Providence deserves an engaged leader. It deserves someone who knows it, who knows its opportunities, its challenges, and who's best ready to represent the ward. I love Providence so much. I've got it tattooed on my forearm here.
That's a
So
first. I haven't seen that before.
yeah, the tattoo artist said the same thing. So the Ward 3 is this little corner right here. So I can't wait to represent it.
That's awesome. I actually never seen that before. I think Councilwoman Kerwin has a tattoo of the Superman building, if I'm not mistaken, or something along those lines. This
Yeah.
is more of a Ward 3 related question. There have been meetings focused on a North Main Street corridor revitalization study. I know this is one of the policies on your campaign platform. What could be done to revitalize the North Main Street corridor?
I'm so excited that the city's actually taken interest in this. This has been a long time coming with Summit Neighborhood Association and the Mount Hope, formerly Mount Hope Neighborhood Association, now Mount Hope Community Center, have been working together to advocate for the city to re-envision, revitalize, do something with North Main Street. We are a top New England city, and we shouldn't have just a multi-mile stretch of one of our busiest roads be kind of the place where auto parts and drive-throughs take place. It needs to have an identity. We need to invest in it. It needs to be a beautiful neighborhood boulevard. I attended one of the recent meetings that the city council put on, led by Councilor LaFortune, and I was excited about the ideas that they were presenting. They talked a lot about using the negative space there, all the parking lots, all the blacktops, before we just start building, to allow temporary setups to let neighbors see and envision for themselves what the space could be. They talked about putting a temporary soccer field over there to see if that's something that neighbors gravitate toward. They talked about restaurants using the open space for outdoor seating. Now that we've all experienced COVID and we've been eating outside, there's maybe a larger demand for that. Definitely housing was a big part of the conversation. I would advocate for that. I think going through the housing crisis that we're currently experiencing, I think that North Main Street is a perfect place because it's on the R line, which brings folks through the urban core. It's one of the highest trafficked RIPTA corridors in the state. It is the highest traffic RIPTA corridor in the state. So housing on there would be incredible. It would allow people to move through from their homes to wherever they were going via our bus system. Yeah, so there's a lot of great ideas for it. And I'm excited to see what the community comes up with. This is going to be a community decision. It's going to be collaborative, and it's going to require a lot of engagement on behalf of Ward 3 neighbors.
As city councilor, you would have to make decisions and talk about topics that would face the city as a whole. So alongside Ward 3 questions, we're also going to cover some ground on the city as a whole. One of them being the city's pension system. It's one of the key issues heading into this election cycle. There are a variety of solutions being proposed on how to fix it. For example, the mayor's proposing a $500 million pension obligation bond that voters would get to vote on. From your perspective, what could be done to fix the city's pension system?
All right, so I've got a lot of ideas about the pension system. In fact, it's something that I kind of nerd out over, so you'll excuse me if I get a little excited about talking about it. I've got like a three-part plan basically to talk about the pension system. The first step is empowering, supercharging Providence's small business community by investing in Providence's Office of Small Business Development, Office of Economic Development as it is currently, but could be reframed as small business development. I think that Providence if it invests in its business community, should be able to see the returns of that investment. Right now, businesses contribute to the Providence economy through property tax, but that's got to change if we want to be positioned alongside their success. I think that would require, in order to see that, we would need to team up with the state of Rhode Island and get some revenue sharing going so that sales taxes, which increase with local business success, could be shared and allocated back to the municipality that it came from. And once we get that squared away, when we invest in the small business community, we would be investing in ourselves. It puts us on the same team, you know? So that's step one, is to empower the small business community through the Office of Economic Development and establish a revenue sharing agreement with the state of Rhode Island. That's one way we can start getting more money into the pension fund. The second opportunity is with pilot agreements. So the pilot agreement, payment in lieu of taxes for our largest nonprofits, which take up a very large percentage of our city property, things like Brown University, Lifespan, Providence College, a lot of the larger nonprofit players, which don't pay taxes, property taxes. They contribute in a lot of ways, but the city does lose out significantly when it has to forego the property tax that those entities would be paying, and instead the taxpayer has to then subsidize those costs, right? So in effect, the city of Providence, the residents of Providence, have to pay when Brown does not. And these entities continue to expand, right? This is kind of unfair because Brown University will buy an office building and slowly wean it off the tax roll, and that's it. And then Providence loses that revenue. So it's net negative. I would, similar to my first part, I would like that to be tied to, I would like them to have to contribute on a basis of how much land they occupy. So I think in Boston, the model they employ is that 20% of the land that they would pay if they were a traditional taxpayer is what is allocated to the city. 20% was chosen because 20% of the city's budget is things like police, fire, emergency services, and snow removal, which the large nonprofit players utilize regardless. So they can't opt out of those things as a nonprofit. And so that's the idea that Boston has. Boston also does a 50% in-kind potential, so that these large players could say, if the tax was $10 million, Brown University could do $5 million to the city in direct payments, $5 million in kind payments. So things like scholarships for Providence school children, or teacher workshops for school teachers, whatever way that they want to contribute the $5 million in a way that best suits them as an entity. I would think that Boston's system fails, though, in that this is an MOU, a memorandum of understanding between the universities and museums that they have up there, and they often don't collect the full amount that's owed. I think that we would need to go to the state and make this a law. We would need to confirm that this is a mandatory payment, wouldn't be called a tax, perhaps a fee that that these university partners and hospital partners need to pay on a percent of the land that they occupy in the city. So that's part two. And part three is Providence Water. So Jorge Lorza unsuccessfully tried to privatize Providence Water a couple of years ago now, 2019 that was, to great consternation, and rightful consternation, because the community didn't want their water going to a private company, which would lower in quality and in transparency and in accountability. The better plan is that the state of Rhode Island purchases the water system from us. So as a city councilor, I would advocate with state and local representation in the state house to get the state to purchase Providence Water. This is justified because Providence in the early 1900s built Providence Water with $21 million of Providence taxpayer money, and now the state regulates it like a state asset. Providence is not allowed to collect general revenue from the Providence water system. Beg your pardon, my cat is making an appearance here. Is not allowed to collect money from the system. They can't collect taxes on the land that Providence Water occupies when places like Johnson and Cranston are allowed to. So there's a lot. Providence is now essentially subsidizing the 17% of the state's population is subsidizing 60% of the state's population in water consumption. So that's not good either. So Providence should advocate for the state to purchase it because the state regulates it like a state asset in the first place. And it's funny because the assets of Providence Water are about $500 million, which is exactly the same amount that we're trying to borrow in the form of a bond. And lastly, once we wrap this up, once we get all the streams of revenue and put it into the Providence Pension Fund, I'm advocating for us to transfer the pension debt to the state of Rhode Island, that we merge it with the Municipal Employees Retirement System, MERS, which the state treasurer runs, because it is a more successful, stable fund. It would limit Providence's liability in the future. And it's essentially like the state taking our debt and becoming our servicer for it, because the state has a larger financial portfolio. They have the capacity to do that and not hamstring the city of Providence from making its payments and causing us to potentially go into bankruptcy. So that's my whole thing. So I'm sorry if that was a lot for you, but that's
not a problem. Not a problem.
Okay.
On the show, we always love to have the in-depth discussions on the issues because they're not as easy as a yes or no or in favor of opposed to. One question, quick follow-up I want to ask, because you mentioned the idea of Brown University and PC paying their fair share. They take up a large sum of land in the city. They don't. RISD's on that list too. Johnson Wales, they do the nonprofit loophole, and then Brown's case at charter that dates back to before the country's founding. There's actually a bill that Rep. Morales, Senator Bell, and also, to my understanding, Senator Mack are planning to introduce together in this session to allow the city of Providence. This would basically unlock the door to let the city of Providence then have the ability to tax these institutions. Would you support a measure like that?
Yeah, I would have to read the bill. I think that that's a great idea. I like that ability. I wonder about the implication that would have. I mean, it's not like Brown University can pick up and go anywhere. It's not like they can't be like some business that's just going to say, oh, we're going to move to Florida. And
I've said that plenty of times. They can't just say, oh, bye.
So they're kind of at it.
Put housing there. Boom. Property tax revenue.
Done and done. Yeah. And it is very tempting as a legislator to just say like, oh, let's just tax the heck out of them, because they can't go anywhere. The relationship has to be respected. They are a large university. They do bring a lot to our city and our state, but they need to be paying a reasonable amount. So I would have to look more at the bill and look at what the implications were, if the city would be permitted to tax it however it wanted, or what it was going to be. But yeah, I'm really interested in learning more about that. I can call up Tiara. I'll reach out to her. She and I are friends.
Looking more into your campaign platform, one of the pieces on your platform is making other means of transit accessible. How would you be able to get this done on the city council level?
Sure. So the city council has taken the lead role in arbitering conversations with community, specifically regarding bike lanes, right? And all sort of planning activities. For example, the North Main Street community meeting, where we talked about introducing new bus lanes and making public transit more effective and more affordable. Well, more accessible, I guess, would be the better word in our community. Bike lanes specifically are going to be an uphill battle. There are folks who are very opposed to bike lanes in our community. As you can see, I'm a bike lane supporter. I love to get out and be able to be engaging in different ways to move through the city. I think it helps us become closer with the city when we are moving in it as opposed to through it in a vehicle. I think it just kind of generates larger pride and morale, sort of being a resident. And there's also studies to show, contrary to popular belief, that bicycling through a business district, bicyclists need to eat too. They need to stop and consume things and purchase things. And it supports local business to have bicycle accessibility in front of them. Often the largest lament is that business owners lose parking in front of their places of business, and that theoretically is going to hamper their bottom line. When I know that when I make decisions about where I'm going to go, parking doesn't usually come up as a consideration. If I want to go to Hope Street, I will allocate an extra 5 minutes of my time to find a parking spot. Maybe I have to go a block over or something like that, but it doesn't really change my decision to go to Hope Street. If I have to go downtown on a busy night to see a show at PPAC, for example, I'll take the bus. $2 comes right by my house, comes on Hope Street. It's not a huge problem for me anyway. I understand that other people have more challenges than that. So again, just like any other problem, this is going to be a collaborative approach. We have to engage business members. We have to show them that this is actually an economic boost for them to allow a whole nother method of transportation. Right now, only cars and I guess ambitious walkers can get over to where they are. But opening it up to bike lanes adds like a whole larger spectrum of customers for them. And so I will take a lead role in explaining that and promoting that and hosting meetings where people can feel heard, and hopefully we can show that this is going to be a helpful as opposed to a hurtful measure.
Shifting to the topic of education, it's without a doubt another one of the top issues residents in the city would like to see addressed. There are a number of reforms that need to be done, whether it's providing adequate funding to repair the buildings, the debate on the roles charter schools should have in the city and the state, transitioning out of state control, the list goes on. I know on your website this is a top priority of yours. In what ways could the educational system in Providence be improved?
So the number one problem, and this kind of goes to larger than, this is Sylvia, by the way, excuse me. The number one problem in most government, I find, is lack of ETA, I refer to it, engagement, transparency, and accountability. And all of those things can be resolved when you empower the community to make decisions regarding themselves. When it comes to the schools, we already have a format for this. This is all collaborative governance stuff that's outlined in the Providence Climate Justice Plan, which came out in 2019. There was exhaustive research about this sort of thing, and Providence was rated compared to other cities on how collaborative it is. But collaborative governance is not new when it comes to in the school district, because we have what's called a school board, right? The school board makes decisions on behalf of the school, and it is theoretically representative of the community that the school services. At this moment, we have a school board, but it is unempowered. It essentially makes recommendations. It has no real governing authority. And now the state has taken over Providence schools. So now there's a whole nother level of removal from this community being in control of their own school system. I would advocate as a city councilor, sorry, I'm trying to degender my language and it's an uphill battle. As a city councilor, I would work towards first, before ending the state takeover, ensuring that when the state turns the keys back over to the city of Providence, that the community is ready to accept control, and we've restructured our administration to reflect that, the people are in control. So that's going to require a change to the city charter. It's going to say that the city municipal school board is elected and empowered to make decisions. The acting superintendent, or whoever we choose for that at that point, will be empowered to negotiate with the union. I want this to be hands off from the city council, hands off from the mayor. This is an independent body elected by the community to make decisions for its people. And that way we start at the top, right? We start at the top with community engagement, and then from there, the best interest of the community will trickle down through the interests of the school board members. And then we're ready to take it back. Then we're ready to take it back from the state and really make a big difference in Providence Public School.
You also want to address redlining. This is a topic that might get overshadowed in the news cycles by other key issues like education and even public safety, for example. Can you explain for those watching what redlining is and how it could be addressed?
Absolutely. In fact, if you want to learn about redlining, you come to the 3rd Ward and you take a walk on Olney Street, and you like a look at the right side of the road, which is Benefit Street, Ward 2 kind of area, and you can see how nice the houses are and how beautiful triple deckers that have been maintained for a very long time due to access to capital. And if you take a look at the left side of the street, well, first of all, you'll see the what's it called, University Heights, which was where the poor neighborhood that got leveled originally was, because they did not have enough access to capital. It was labeled a slum and removed in urban development times back in the 60s, 70s, when that was in vogue. But beyond that neighborhood, behind the Whole Foods, you'll see Mount Hope, which has been historically, was redlined, was designated by banks as a dangerous investment area and denied capital to residents on the explicit basis of race. Right now, we're dealing with systemic racism where it's inferred and implied, and it's the impact is that people of different races are affected in different ways by certain policies. At this point, we can still observe when the policy was specific. We will not give capital to this community because most of its residents are black. That was the justification. That was written. That was the law until the Federal Housing Act banned discrimination in housing in these sort of policies. So this is the legacy that we're living with right now. In conjunction with our interest in, again, the Providence climate agreement of transitioning heating systems to more ecologically friendly heat pumps, as opposed to the current furnaces that we have, and other environmental improvements, I would propose developing a interest-free loan program that would allow people who have been impacted by the legacy of redlining through their homeownership or their parents' homeownership or their grandparents' ownership to have access to interest-free loans to upgrade their homes, to upgrade heating bills so that they're more heating systems and cooling systems so that they're more efficient, to fix that roof or do whatever needs to be done. A lot of the conflict around this sort of resolution comes from, well, how do you prove that this person was impacted by systems of segregation and discrimination in years past? We have the records on this. We know who was living in these houses, who was denied capital because of racist housing laws. And this is a pretty black and white way, no pun intended, to get resources to those who were denied them. In fact, if we could get the funding, I would like to make these loans forgivable after a certain amount of payments, so that we can put funding directly from the city back into the hands of people who were denied it on the basis of race in the late 60s.
There are a few committees on the city council. You have finance, ordinances, claims and pending suits, public works, etc. Do you have a specific committee you would like to be on if elected?
Yes, two actually are interesting to me. The planning committee would be particularly interesting. I think that often people forget how important planning is. For example, I just penned an op-ed that hopefully will find publication in the near future in Eco Rhode Island News regarding the Port of Providence. I think that that area needs to be rezoned for community usage as opposed to the industrial, environmentally racist uses that it has currently. Just pumping out smoke and bilge and bile into the lungs of children and in the most vulnerable community in our city. So zoning is such an important part. And I think it gets overlooked a lot. I think that being on the planning committee would be very interesting to me, in addition to the special committee on state legislative affairs, because so much of what we need to do as a community to improve Providence relies on state cooperation, because so much of our destiny is intertwined here. We'll need their help to affect legislative change in the city.
You would also be sworn in January 2023 if elected. During that time period, there will be an opening for the council leadership because Council President John Igliozzi is term limited. Councilman Espinal, who is the president pro tempore currently, could try to become council president. We don't know yet when that opens up. Are there any specific city councilors in mind you would like to see be council president or any of those leadership positions?
I've always been impressed with Karen Miller. I've seen her speak a number of times, and she seems like a really genuine person. John Gonsalves also great guy. I've worked with him on a number of things. He came to support some of our river cleanup work when I was with the Rotary Club of Providence. But I don't really know them all individually. I wouldn't estimate one being better than the other until I can really have a conversation and figure out where their political priorities lie. But I'm excited. I mean, a lot of folks are term limited on this council, I understand, and there's going to be a lot of new faces on the city council, and it's an opportunity to get some momentum again at the Providence City Council. You know, as a whole, the body is very reactive. It seems that the Providence City Council is only active when the neighborhoods are enraged about some change that they didn't know about, and they all call their city councilors, and that's when the city council is useful. The city council should be really leading the city of Providence as a body. They have control of the entire purse strings of the city. They should be proactive in addressing some of these problems, or at least, and maybe they are kind of quietly right now, but I would like to hear more about it. I don't hear about it. You know, I'm a pretty engaged guy. I got all my news cycles. I read news like a demon, and I don't hear enough about the initiatives of the city council. So I'd like to hear more about them.
There are a lot of council members that are term limited. I believe this is actually the first cycle where it's kicking into full effect because Narducci's term limited, Salvatore, Igliozzi, Correa. I believe Carmen Castillo's term limited. There's an interesting argument for that. I think that might go to a lawsuit, but that's a different conversation for another time. The current councilor for the seat you're running for, Councilor LaFortune, is running for mayor. This is why there is no incumbent on the ballot for those watching for Ward 3 this year. And there are, alongside yourself, a few candidates eyeing the seat. Are you planning on supporting Councilor LaFortune for mayor?
A great question. I haven't decided yet. There's a lot of, I'm friendly with all the mayoral candidates. Well, the main three, I suppose. I haven't talked too much with Solomon. I've talked to him before, but being on the campaign myself, I see the most active people often. Like, we're always bumping into each other. It's like, oh, it's you again. How's it going? So I've talked to Brett Smiley. I've talked to Gonzalo Cuervo, Near LaFortune, all incredible public advocates. They have so much potential and capacity to help Providence. I can't wait to see any of them in the mayor's office. I haven't exactly made up my mind of who I'm supporting, but I'll have lots of opportunities to talk to them as the campaign rolls forward.
My final question is one that I ask everyone on the show to keep tradition. It's a non-political topic, and that is, in your opinion, what do you think Rhode Island is best known for?
What should they be known for?
What do you think? So we have a lot of things we're best known for. I'm not going to list them off because I'm curious to know, what do you personally think it's best known for?
What is it best known for? Well, I mean, probably our beaches, which ought to change because there's so much, I give tours of Providence. It's part of I got a side hustle. I give Providence Tour Company. Check us out on Instagram. But the Providence Tour Company, we give walking tours of Providence. I just think it's the most fabulous place ever. But people don't think of Providence. People think of Newport, when they think of a vacation destination beyond the state borders. Within the state, I feel like people, I hate to say it, people have a negative interpretation of Rhode Island. They're worried about government corruption, about how the potholes and like all these things that seem to never change because we're a little bit insular. I think that we can restore optimism, though. I think that we have the opportunity as young leaders, all the new council candidates, all the mayoral candidates and governor candidates, for example, could take this opportunity this election year to really restore some confidence in Rhode Island. And I hope it can be known for good governance going forward. But right now, less than ideal, I would say.
That's an interesting take on that, because there's been times where I've had family members that would be out of state, and it's like, oh, you're from Rhode Island. Is that where the corrupt mayor is? This is like during Plunder Dome and all that. So it gives the state a little bit of a bad reputation, and the mob, Raymond S. Patriarch, etc. Bradley, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure of mine to have you on.
Thanks so much, Ray. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much.
And thank you for watching this episode of Ray-ality TV. If you want to see future episodes as soon as they're posted on this channel, please click the subscribe button and post notification bell icon down below. I'm Raymond Bakari, and I'll see you on the next episode.